Hey guys, how you doing? Hope you're having a good day so far today. Thanks for joining me in today's video. Today's video is going to be pretty exciting. This is going to be answering a question in canon from the Rise of Skywalker novelization, which isn't out yet. So thank you to my source, Damien. You've been a godsend. Thank you, man. So today's question revolves around, we know Palpatine was a clone now, but what we don't know is how he actually survived that massive fall down the shaft that Vader threw him to fulfill the prophecy as Anakin Skywalker, bringing balance to the Force and saving his son. So, how he survived is explained in this video. It's also explained that Plagueis is for sure canon now because, well, the book was Legends, and I know we heard about him in the Revenge of the Sith, but now it's implemented in the sequels that Plagueis indeed does exist, which is great for me as well, because there was some questions regarding that online. Some people being, well, is Plagueis now just Legends because the book is? No, he's canon. So I hope we get to know more about him, learn more about him. Let's get on with the video. It's a bit long. There are two pages. It's page 219 to 220, and it covers what Rey sees when she's fighting Sidious at the very end with the lightning. So she's actually able to tap into his thoughts and his memories because of their Force connection, because they have the same bloodline. It also explains his son, which I'm going to go over in tomorrow's video, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And here we go. She will take her revenge, Palpatine boomed. Rey continued to approach. His power was intoxicating. She found herself raising her weapon, almost against her will. If not for the other presence in her mind, bright and shining with light, she would not have been able to resist him. And with the stroke of her saber, the Sith are reborn. The Jedi are dead. Wave after wave of triumph emanated from him, and along with it came knowledge and memories. Maybe it was their shared blood that enabled her to see his thoughts, but somehow she could. And Rey saw it then, how he'd done it, what he was about to do again. Falling, falling, falling. Down a massive shaft, the betrayal sharp and stinging, a figure high above, black-clad and helmeted and shrinking fast. His very own apprentice had turned against him, the way he himself had turned against Plagueis, whose secret to immortality he had stolen. Plagueis had not acted fast enough in his own moment of death, but Sidious, sensing the flickering light in his apprentice, had been ready for years. The falling, dying Emperor called on all the dark power of the Force to thrust his consciousness far, far away, to a secret place he had been preparing. His body was dead, an empty vessel, long before it found the bottom of the shaft, and his mind jolted to new awareness in a new body, a painful one, a temporary one. It was too soon. The secret place had not completed its preparations. The transfer was imperfect, and the cloned body wasn't enough. Perhaps Plagueis was having the last laugh after all. Maybe his secret remained secret. Because Palpatine was trapped in a broken, dying form. The heretics of the Sith Eternal toiled, splicing genes, bolstering tissue, creating unnatural abominations in the hope that one of these strand casts would succeed and become a worthy receptacle. The heretics would do anything, risk anything, sacrifice anything, to create a cradle for their god consciousness. Nothing worked, but their efforts were not entirely in vain. Her vision shifted. It was Luke, sitting cross-legged on the island of Ahch-To, trembling with effort as he projected himself onto the battlefield of Crait, and yet another flash, this time of Leia in her jungle quarters, giving everything she had to send a final thought to Ben. They were all manifestations of the same power, and now Rey would use it her own way. She lifted her saber as if to strike. So, we can now see that Palpatine had for a long time known that Anakin was returning and that Darth Vader had been flickering between the light and the dark, between Anakin and Vader, and his hold on his apprentice was no longer as effective as it once was, or was for all those years. So this to me is very interesting in the sense that Palpatine had known about this, and he had actually gone to try to fix it before it happened, and he had created this place, I assume is Exegol, or it could be his laboratory on Jakku, which we don't really know all that much about. We just know it was heavily guarded, and he had this place on Jakku before the Phantom Menace. So it almost, to me, it's just like things are kind of like just starting to mesh, and I hope we'll find more about all of this stuff in The Mandalorian Season 2. So this vessel, you can see that the Sith Eternal, which were all of his the cultists that were, his groupies kind of around in the arena, those are the Sith Eternal, and they toiled, they spliced genes, bolstering tissue, creating unnatural abominations in the hope that one of these Transcasts would succeed and become a worthy receptacle. So Snoke, right there, is one of those. They were bolstering, so Snoke is not even a species, I think. I think he's just spliced genes and bolstering tissue, creating unnatural abominations. So he's an abomination. That's probably why he's all messed up, because there's this constant theme. Snoke is messed up, Palpatine's messed up, like this clone of him. So it's as if cloning isn't as effective as they would have thought, or they were still trying to figure it all out. And this brings me back to The Mandalorian, and I really think that they were trying to do something with the child, with Baby Yoda, to perfectly make cloning effective and make it how it was supposed to be so that they wouldn't have any flaws like this. But since, of course, the Mando took Baby Yoda, they weren't able to, find the secrets perhaps. And, maybe through that they were trying to splice genes, and that's exactly what he was trying to do, right? So actually, I think that's probably exactly what he was trying to probably create a vessel for Baby Yoda for him to, that's, okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So maybe Baby Yoda was supposed to be a vessel, and that actually makes sense. Oh, okay, maybe we'll see. I guess we'll see. So Snoke obviously failed. That whole arc with Snoke, obviously, they could have done that better. But I mean, now we just see that he was just a failed clone. All of these things were just failed experiments, pretty much. And he had this clone of himself, I suppose, that was imperfect. And he transferred his essence, but like, what was this? Like, this Palpatine was just like decaying for like the last 30 years, and he was just trapped in there. I suppose he was just trapped in that. Yeah, you know what? He just created this clone that wasn't really all that great, and he was just trapped in that body. And that's why he says, perhaps Plagueis had the last laugh after all. It says right here, the transfer was imperfect, and the cloned body wasn't enough. Perhaps Plagueis was having the last laugh after all. Maybe his secret remained secret, because Palpatine was... so right here we find out, too, the power to achieve death is to transfer your consciousness. So, that's so cryptic, dude. So, Anakin would have had to transfer Padme's consciousness into another body. It wasn't even as he thought, to just, like, for immortality, in the sense that you're, like, in your own vessel. So Palpatine was just trying to create clones of himself, transfer his body in there. Not even clones of himself. He had that probably as a backup, as like a failsafe, which turned out to be correct because he ended up transferring himself in there. But I believe his failsafe, indeed, was supposed to be the child, Baby Yoda, that I literally just came to my mind during this video, which is interesting, but it might be totally far-fetched and off, too. My second thoughts are, why didn't he create Luke, a clone of Luke from his hand? Perhaps he didn't find the hand. I don't know. Or a clone of Anakin. Why didn't he try to do... okay. I guess he couldn't because of the bloodline. So maybe he was trying with Baby Yoda and then they eventually learned. But no, he did it with Snoke. So, I mean, what's the difference there, really, right? Maybe he was trying to take bits of Baby Yoda, splice genes, and then create some other vessel. Some, like, crazy, immortal, long-living, like, 900-year-old max life vessel that he could have just... that would have been crazy. So that's a possibility too. Now, the other interesting part about this is that his mind was sharper than ever, and his mind and his consciousness were more powerful than ever, because this is Palpatine, the original Palpatine, but it's just not in the proper body, right? So I explained this before. It's like you have a really powerful engine, but in the wrong auto body, right? So the chassis starts bending and breaking, and everything just doesn't work because it's just too powerful for that body. There's too much horsepower, there's too much torque for the chassis, for everything, for the body, and just it doesn't work. It just breaks. So he wasn't able to use... That's why... See, when I saw The Rise of Skywalker, I thought, okay, this is Palpatine that survived. Like, that's why he's all gnarled up and everything. But no, because it wouldn't make sense for him to not have hands and like fingers from just the fall. I mean, maybe, but he'd be more messed up than that. So this was just a failed clone. It also explains how he didn't have the same wrinkles. He was just like kind of old, and that's why they didn't use the same prosthetics. Okay, so it's all starting to make sense now. So this, to me, answers a very big question that I had in my mind, is like, how did Palpatine exactly, so we know he transferred his essence or he was a clone, but what exactly did he do? So we now know that before he even fell, before that explosion happened in Return of the Jedi, Palpatine was already on Exegol in that clone body, which was not enough. It was imperfect. And I guess that was the best of what they had. So some of the other ones must have been like some very deformed Palpatines, like just, but, and the Snokes too, there were different versions of him, as we saw Ian McDiarmid say in yesterday's video, which I covered, which was a kind of a Comic-Con panel. You guys can check that out, where he actually, so some people are saying that, okay, no, like, they changed the plan on us, like he's a clone now. It's like, no, he was always supposed to be a clone. If you look at the Mando, it's all about cloning. If you look at what Ian McDiarmid said regarding the script, and this was 6 days or so before that this book was leaked to me, and I made that video, which now everyone is talking about, because this information is just so grand. And that's the fact that Palpatine was supposed to say, there was a deleted scene that they cut out. Palpatine was supposed to say, Kylo was supposed to say to him, "You're just a clone," and Palpatine was supposed to say, "More than a clone, less than a man." And they cut it out, I guess, because they figured that, okay, well, it's kind of self-explanatory that all of this is cloning. We see Snoke in all these vats and in these cloning tanks, so it just makes sense that this is exactly what's going on. So they cut that out, but of course, I would have liked for them to explain it a little bit more, because I was myself a bit confused. I'm like, is this Palpatine return, or is his essence transfer? Are they going Dark Empire style comics here? So now we know he transferred his essence as he was falling. And something I want to mention as well is that in the novelization for The Return of the Jedi, Palpatine didn't do anything about Vader when he grabbed him, because he was so thrusted in the dark side, so angry that Vader was betraying him, that he was just shooting lightning everywhere, and he didn't really understand what was going on, because he was just that angry. He was just that upset. He was that pissed. So that's a reason that he didn't actually defend himself, and he was just going crazy, and then he's like, ah! Some people are like, well, that's kind of lame. Why didn't he do anything? Because when you're in the dark side that much, after what he was doing to Luke, trying to kill him, right? He was ramping up the lightning. Then he was just kind of out of it and just so tunnel visioned. He was just black rage, and he blacked out and didn't know what was going on. And then and he died. Well, his body died. His essence transferred to a place far, far away, as it says here. So this is awesome. It explains it, and explains that Plagueis is, of course, canon, because I know a lot of people were wondering, is Plagueis canon now? Because the book is Legends. Plagueis is canon, baby. Even though he explains it in Revenge of the Sith, some people were like, well, maybe Plagueis is just made up. No, he's canon now. It's acknowledged now in the sequels, which takes it full circle from the prequels to the sequels. This is great. I'm with it. They're just literally, this is the Dark Empire comics with a twist. I would have liked, Dark Empire comics were cool because they were weird and lame, but they were also cool at the same time, because you get Luke fighting a young clone of Palpatine, but, with his essence transferred. And I would have liked to have seen that in the movies. I think that would have been pretty sweet. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a thumbs up if you did for the information. Tomorrow's video will cover Palpatine's son, because we actually get to find out in the book who he is and why he killed him and all of that, so on and so forth. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for the animations coming in about a week or so time, and more info about episode 2, and of course the daily videos. So subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.